Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're actually going to talk about my top 5 cryptocurrencies, which many of you guys already know if you've been following me for over the last year and a half. A lot of these projects are ones we cover day in and day out, but there are a lot of new people into the space, and so I thought it would be useful to just make one succinct video where I discuss my top projects and how I manage the positions in each of them. So if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel in the description below. Let's go for 100,000 subscribers. Now, the first thing I need to say is we're not making this video to say, 5 coins to get you to 1 million or any of that BS, clickbait title stuff. This is not the point. The point is to analyze various cryptocurrency investments that should hopefully play out fairly well over the long haul. And there's various ways that I manage these positions, and we will cover that in this video. So let's go ahead and jump in. Now, if you've been around here for a long time, you already know what these 5 projects are. Bitcoin, of course, Ethereum, Polkadot, Cardano, and Chainlink. And you might say, well, these are already in the top 10. And that is true, they're already in the top 10. But when we first started covering them, they were not all in the top 10. In fact, ADA and Link at the time were not in the top 10. And Polkadot, we started covering it before it even launched. And, we said this could easily be a top 5, top 10 coin. And here we are. So these are the main 5 projects that I follow. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polkadot, Cardano, and Chainlink. Now, the reason I follow Bitcoin is because it is the market mover, okay? It defines the market. If Bitcoin is doing well, then we know that the market capitalization is going up. So if Bitcoin is doing well, we know that the entire crypto market cap is going up. However, we're not sure if the rest of the market's doing well, okay? If you just gave me a chart of the entire cryptocurrency market cap, and I was able to watch it, and it started going up really quickly, then a lot of times that can mean that Bitcoin is doing well, but the rest of the market isn't doing so hot. Think about times over the last several months when Bitcoin was performing phenomenally well, and most of the rest of the market was just sitting still. So Bitcoin is a must. It has been, and it always will be the majority of my portfolio. After that is Ethereum. The reason I have Ethereum is simply because, it's more or less the backbone of a lot of cryptocurrency infrastructure in decentralized finance, in terms of smart contracts, platforms for other cryptocurrencies. There's so many applications for Ethereum in terms of real-world utility that I own Ethereum. And also, it has, in terms of development, it is leaps and bounds above a lot of other projects in terms of actually getting people to use the platform, right? Most people use Ethereum. Most people use that network. Now, DOT is one that has very little history, and the reason why I think this one is worthwhile to hold, again, none of this is financial advice, the reason why I think this one is worthwhile to hold is because I do think it will have a role to play this market cycle in being its own platform for a lot of various projects. As the entire cryptocurrency market capitalization trends to several trillion, then I think Polkadot will be one that I would want to hold. Cardano is a hedge for me against Ethereum. Now, I own a lot more Ethereum than Cardano, but Cardano has, it has a lot going for it, and it's taken a very different path than Ethereum. So Ethereum started off with proof of work, and now they're transitioning to proof of stake. Cardano just is going, they went straight to proof of stake, skipped the transition step, and of course they got a lot of flack from people for being called vaporware, which is really not it's not really doing Cardano any justice. They're a project, they launched, they're still in development. That doesn't mean it needs to be labeled as vaporware. It's just something that's in development. And so the tall order for Cardano will be, of course, can it actually attract a lot of people to use its platform? And so this is the primary, this is one of the primary things that it has to overcome, in my opinion, right? In my opinion. However, it is my primary hedge against Ethereum. And then the final one is Chainlink. and this is one of the ones that I really do enjoy holding in terms of its. I mean, primarily because, frankly, the price action and how it moves against Bitcoin, including Chainlink in my portfolio, I've seen, if you just do the math, right, don't take it up with me, take it up with the data, the risk-adjusted returns are improved by holding Link because negative volatility of Link tends to be offset by positive volatility of Bitcoin, but negative volatility of Bitcoin tends to be offset by positive volatility of Link. So it's simple that it improves your risk-adjusted returns. And so, those are the five primary projects that I hold. Now, of course, the whole Oracle solution for Chainlink and all the partnerships it's developing with all the different projects to connect real-world data to the blockchain, that is important, right? We're not going to discount the actual fundamental side, but we tend to not focus on fundamentals on this channel. We tend to focus on the price. So these are the five main projects I hold, and when we first started talking about them, a lot of them were in like the top 20, maybe top 25 or so. Link was the one that used to be a lot further down, and it's made a lot of headway. So my goal this market cycle, and we'll see if it happens, it might not happen. My goal is to see Bitcoin, Ethereum, DOT, ADA, and Link make up the top five. Because I think for me, these should be the top five. But again, I don't always get what I want. In fact, frequently, I do not always get what I want. So we'll keep an eye on these projects. Obviously, DOT has recently flipped Litecoin. Cardano is a stone throw from flipping Litecoin. And if that happens, then Bitcoin, Ethereum, DOT, and ADA are in the top five because we're simply not going to include stablecoins in our estimation of what's in the top five, right? It's going to be 1, 2, XRP is 3, DOT is 4, and Litecoin is 5. So Link is the one that really needs to pick up the slack. However, it has come a long ways. It wasn't that long ago that it was all the way down here. So it has been moving up fairly aggressively over the last couple years. Now, if we look at Bitcoin, we can see where it currently is. It is fairly overextended. Obviously, it doesn't mean it can't continue to go up, but it is fairly overextended. If you take a look at Ethereum, it's printed our nice W that we've been talking about for months on the channel, and now we're sort of at a crossroads as to are we going to continue up into a new paradigm for Ethereum, or are things going to cool off for a while and we'll continue up later, something like this, okay, and or a more substantial correction, right, and then back up. So Ethereum is one that I do think it will capture a lot of the new money coming into the market over the next several years as people really learn about the space and recognize what's going on and see that Ethereum really is the backbone of a lot of what goes on in crypto. Now, ADA, so first let's look at Link. Link has done phenomenally well over the last 2 years, and this is why I'm saying, just because it's barely in the top 10, but if you just take a look at this, it's up over 1,000% since September of 2019, and if you go back even further, so let's go back even further by looking at a different exchange. So since 2017, it's up a lot more. Okay, so from these bottoms or so, it's up a modest 13,000%. So a pretty substantial move for Chainlink over the long haul. ADA doing quite well. It's doing quite well as well. We know that it peaked at around $1.30, $1.38 or something last cycle. I think it was way overvalued then. I don't think it's necessarily overvalued anymore. And I do think it really will have a big role to play this cycle. And then lastly, DOT. The reason why I hold DOT is I do think it has a role to play, but it's also good a lot of times to just have a project that's new to the space that you think will do well because it doesn't have all these mental barriers that it has to overcome. And we've identified this accumulation phase. If you watch the channel, we talked about this accumulation phase for DOT and said, you know what, between $3 and $6, it seems like a pretty good buy. Not that it was financial advice, but for me, it was between $3 and $6 was a pretty good buy. And I said, okay, I think we're going to look back in a few months or a few years, whenever it is, and look back and be like, oh, this was such a great accumulation period for DOT. And so far, it's doing quite well. It's over $10. Now, Ether, Bitcoin, the reason we have all these projects is because if you just own Bitcoin or you just own Ethereum, then you're subject to the idiosyncratic risk of that individual asset. There's the market risk and there's the idiosyncratic risk. So by having 5, hopefully some of those idiosyncratic risks cancel each other out. That's why having mutual funds are a great way to navigate traditional markets, because by having the entire market, you essentially eliminate the idiosyncratic risk from any individual stock, because it cancels out with the idiosyncratic risks of all the other stocks. And so you ultimately just get the market risk, and if the market trends up, then your portfolio trends up, and if the market trends down, then your portfolio trends down. The problem with crypto, and the reason why I don't want to hold too many projects, is because there's such a huge opportunity cost of holding any individual project. If you're throwing money into microcaps, of course they could do well, but their dollars not going into Bitcoin, not going into Ethereum, and the risk-adjusted returns on these higher market cap coins are frankly just a lot more attractive to me, and also for institutional investors, and for really serious investors. People don't necessarily want to throw millions of dollars at micro-cap cryptocurrencies, but if you're looking at, say, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and maybe some of the other ones in the top 10, those are a lot more attractive because they have, there's just more volume into these coins. They're not going to be so easy to move based on one person selling a decent amount, and they actually are not, because they've made it into the top 10. There is some validation in terms of, okay, these projects do seem worthwhile. Now, that wasn't always the case. If you go back 5 years, of course, there are many coins that are no longer in the top 10 that were in the top 10 back then. In fact, if you go back and look, a lot of the coins back then you probably wouldn't even recognize in the top 10 today. And why don't we just go ahead and go take a look while we're at it? So we're going to go to historical snapshots. Let's go back to April 28th of 2013. Bitcoin, Litecoin, we know those. Purecoin, Namecoin, Terracoin, Devcoin, Novacoin. Most people have probably never heard about those. Okay, so the point is to say, we think that in 5 years, or I think that in 5 years, Link, ADA, DOT, Ethereum, and Bitcoin should still be doing quite well. They should still be doing very, very well. However, there's a good chance that projects that don't even exist yet will launch over the next several years and make their own way into the top 5. And if projects launch that I think will make it into the top 5 or 10, I'll probably talk about them. There's certainly projects that are climbing the ladder now, and we've talked about those a lot in the past. So when we're talking about Ethereum, holding Ethereum, having it a position in your portfolio of Ethereum, it works out quite well because you do pay for a little bit more risk, more volatility, but the return, the theoretical return on Ethereum is higher than it is for Bitcoin. And so that's why I hold Ethereum, and it's my number 2 position. If you look at ADA Bitcoin, we identified this accumulation phase last year of ADA against Bitcoin. And then a few weeks ago, we said, oh, look at this, we're back in accumulation phase. And it's already quickly bounced back out of it. So it's important to look at the valuations of these cryptocurrencies, not only against USD, but against Bitcoin and against Ethereum. If they can never go through periods of substantial growth against Bitcoin or Ethereum, then you simply have to wonder, why do you hold the coin? So, and it's not necessarily to say that I hold this, throughout all this entire move and watch it come back down. No, I did sell some ADA up here to Ethereum, actually. And one of the interesting things about the ADA Ethereum valuation is that while it so far seems to be trending down, its peaks tend to be more or less the same. So if we were to come back up, this could be a good indication of, all right, well, historically speaking, once it gets to this level, you might want to consider taking some off the table. It's not financial advice, it's just looking at the data. Now, if you go back further, you can see that there was the first peak that went up much higher. Now, one thing to consider is that all 3 of these peaks were in the bear market and accumulation phase, and then this one was at the end of the bull market. So that's not to say that ADA can't go higher than this Ether valuation. In fact, there's a decent chance that it would if, in fact, we are entering into a very prolonged bull market. However, we just need to be pragmatic about things, and once it gets to this level, think about the implications of, if it does something like this and it comes back up here, and you don't take any off the table, then think about the implications if it were to come back down. And if it did, and you look back at it, and it's like, well, the data did say that there was a good chance that was going to happen. Again, we're not saying that's going to happen, but it's just something to keep an eye on. By focusing on, say, 5 cryptocurrencies rather than throwing money into 100 different ones and going this route, the opportunity cost you lose on a lot of that money is just too much, And furthermore, it's too hard to follow too closely a lot of the trends of these different cryptocurrencies. So the other one we can look at is Bitcoin. And one of the things we said was, well, yeah, it's trending down, but it also had this massive launch. And hopefully we'll have a bottom where we start to continue back up. And the reason we said this is because launched in a similar phase when Ethereum launched back in 2015. So if you go back and look at Ethereum in 2015, it more or less did the same thing. So it had this massive launch, it trended down, okay, it came back up, back down, and then it launched, okay? So down, back up, slightly back down, but higher than that bottom, and then it launched, okay? Now we're looking at DOT against Bitcoin. It's done something very similar so far. Has it not? Down, back up, down, and it looks like, I don't know if it's about to launch or not, but it's just something to keep in mind. And for me, for DOT right now, I have no desire to sell it in the short term. I'm just buying it and staking it. If you look at the ADA, we already talked about ADA Ether. If you look at DOT Ether, it's also starting to make a move as well, which is substantial because Ethereum, for me, is the index for the altcoin market. So if it's outperforming Ethereum at various times, then it makes sense to hold it. Link against Bitcoin is one of my favorite ways to trade, because whether you think about it in terms of increasing your Bitcoin stack or you're a Link Marine and you think about it in terms of your Link stack, trading these two has tended to work out very well based on these Link micro bubbles against Bitcoin. So they tend to keep happening. This is the first one where it went down this low. We could say, well, maybe this was just a very big bubble against Bitcoin, and we had this build up the mean, blow off top, and then come back down, despair, maybe we're going to get on track. Okay, that's more or less how I see it. Obviously, it will depend on the rest of the market and how Bitcoin's doing. If Bitcoin can just calm down at 34.8, then maybe Link can continue to gain valuation and get back on course against Bitcoin. So, like as we were saying, maybe this is the despair region against Bitcoin, and then it'll get back on track. If we look at DOT, we already talked about DOT. Here's Link Ether. I don't really trade this one that much. I do sometimes send Link to Ether, but a lot of times I'm trading Link to Bitcoin. So it typically works out, and this is just based on my personal experience. It tends to work out that ADA Ether are a decent. ADA ETH is a decent trade, a decent pair to trade, and then Link Bitcoin, and that covers all four of them. And then you have DOT as the one that I'm more or less just staking and forgetting about it. So these are the 5 main coins that I have for the market cycle. I do have small positions in other coins, and of course, if you're on the premium list, you know which ones those are. But these are the main 5 that I am following for the market cycle. It's obviously been a parrot by which videos I talk about on YouTube for the last year and a half. But now at least there's one video for all the newcomers to say, okay, these are the top 5. I'm not going to, I'm not going to get in your face and say, these are the top 5 to make you $1 million or anything, any BS like that, because these are the type of clickbait titles that people will make to get you to click them, and then they just, if it doesn't pan out, they don't talk about them again. And this is what we said last year. This is exactly what we said last year. We're only going to pick 5 so that, in some ways we're held accountable on these 5. If I put out videos on 100 different cryptocurrencies, and if one doesn't do that well, then I can, you can just stop talking about it. But these are the main 5 that we talk about. Obviously, we've talked about other coins on the channel, like Litecoin. We've talked about the Uniswap governance token. We've talked about XRP, obviously, with the stuff going on with XRP right now. It's definitely muddied the waters there. But the main 5 that I focus on are Bitcoin, Ethereum, Link, ADA, and DOT. Bella, DOT, with like a little period, and the period is a dot. So Bella. I've joked with my wife that if we have a girl one day, we'll have to name her Isabella. Anyways, these are the main 5 that I follow. I'm just keeping an eye to see if we'll get into the top 10. If you guys want to know more information on how I manage these positions, check out the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. You get access to weekly reports, weekly videos, a Telegram alerts channel, a Telegram chat room, a risk dashboard, a whole lot more. And a lot more coming this year. So make sure you guys check it out, intothecryptoverse.com. Subscribe to the channel. Let's go for 100,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up. Turn on the alerts. Check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. That'll wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in. Those are my top 5.